Since the beginning of human history, we have been asking ourselves the same questions. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Who are we? What are we? We explore ourselves and our environments. We create religions to move more safely in the undetermined. We research and invent new sciences because we are curious and because we see how much knowledge benefits us. We invent the most fantastic technologies, overcome diseases, provide for increasing planetary prosperity, and always find new problems and new challenges. Our world is becoming more complex every day, and the more it becomes, the clearer it gets, it is not enough to accumulate knowledge. We must also know how to deal with it. Instead of just asking what is important to think, we are becoming more aware that how we think is even more important. Many people have started to meditate. They practice mindfulness, learn different body techniques that help them to center themselves and become more relaxed in order to better face the increasingly complex demands of everyday life. But also because they have become aware that consumerism does not make them happy. Many also realize how inadequate their education actually is and attend courses, read philosophy books, venture into mathematics, biology, physics, coding, and so on. Prosperity for all is an important goal, but at the same time, we humans want to live a meaningful life, which is why we start asking questions about how we might do it. At the root of all these questions lies the question of how we actually function. How does our consciousness work? How do we think? What are our gifts given by nature? It will surprise many, but actually two of these gifts are logical and systemic thinking. As far as the handling of logic, mathematics and other formal models is concerned, the school has done thorough work on most of our culture. Instead fostering these gifts, they have been driven out of us thoroughly by ignoring everything we know today about learning. But if we observe children as they explore their world, we see they analyze, they draw conclusions. They think as a whole, they connect, they make larger connections, and they are not afraid to make mistakes, reflect and reposition themselves when their attempts fail. We have developed a multivalent logic that reflects how we think. We can use it to map our decision-making processes and develop computer emulations from them that show us how certain forms of our thinking, acting and communicating differentiate as systems. Who knows how he functions can reflect more consciously. This multivalent logic is called uFORM iFORM. It is a polyvalent logic of cognition. Poly means multi or more. Valent comes from value. It is a logic that models what we all do every day. It shows us what it means to think systemically. And when we learn it, we learn to trace our own thought processes more closely, to become more conscious, more attentive, more mindful, and more reflected. In a series of several short lectures, I will provide an introduction to this logic of cognition and show how simple we actually are and what fantastic complexities result from it. We will take a look at our evolutional history here, and we will keep it simple. Usually, most people flinch when someone tries to motivate them to logic. But form logic, that's another word for this logic of cognition, can inspire us simply because we literally take a look at our own cognitive, our own intellectual processes. Logic and systemic thinking are innate superpowers. Form logic lies in our blood, as does mathematics, believe it or not. Here we'll use very simple symbols that depict cognitive processes that we carry out every second. We simply look inside ourselves. Many people think logic is complicated, but the opposite is the case. It is simple, and at first you have to do what the rule dictates. Logic is not too complicated for us. We often think too complicated for logic. Let's start with a practical exercise. What do you do when you look at something? Try it right now. Close your eyes. Try to empty your mind. Then open your eyes and look at the next best thing that catches your eye. How did you do that? Most people will now say something like, I looked around a bit, it was a little blurry at first, but then I saw the object. You focused. It's like using a camera to focus on the object you want to capture. Or when you decide to go left, not right. You continuously make logical decisions. Whether you left or right, choose the green apple or the red apple, this is not new for you, and we just bring it into a formally readable form that allows us to examine these decisions. And the moment you had your focus, you finished your decision-making process and you marked the object. The sign with which we represent such a marking in the form logic at first is a circle. It could also be a point, a comma, an exclamation mark. The circle is simply a symbol we agreed on, that's all. When we focus something and then mark it, we distinguish that something, that thought, that sign, that object from others. We create content and context. Just as a farmer delimits his field with a fence and thus distinguishes it from what is not his field. He detaches his field from everything else, context. What would the field be without its surroundings? What would a hole in the wall be without the wall? We distinguish things from each other and we designate them. This is how our logic of cognition begins. This is how we create our world. It becomes more complex later, but that's enough for the beginning. Just understand that you circle the content, and content is nothing without context. And if you focus on something else, the form, content and context, you thought before suddenly become empty, and you mark another content excluded from another context. Form, content and context. The content is marked, a distinction is made between content and context, and the form becomes empty if we distinguish something else. The form disappears from our focus, it's gone, vanish, empty, huh? With this, you have already learned two of the important signs of form logic. Stay tuned. Next time I show you what else we can use empty forms for and how we decide.